Hi there, this is the Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. And today's random review is Yorgos Lanthimos, his latest film from 2018, The Favourite. This is a Region A Blu-ray. Because I'm a fan of Lanthimos, I couldn't wait till the end of May for the Region B release, so I got a Region A release. First of all, let me say, I was approaching this film with a little bit of trepidation, only in the sense that the script wasn't written by Lanthimos, which would be the first time in his filmography. Secondly, it's also a costume drama, which is perhaps unusual for Lanthimos. And from what I heard, lots of people liked it, which again is perhaps a little bit unusual with Lanthimos' back catalogue. Most of his films are you either love them or you hate them, and there's not a lot in between. But The Favourite obviously got a lot of love at awards. Olivia Coleman won the Oscar, even though really all three actresses, Olivia Coleman, Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz, should have all pretty much won Oscars. But I shouldn't have actually been concerned. This for me is Lanthimos' third straight great film. It's the story of Queen Anne, played by Olivia Coleman, and her confidant and strategist, Lady Sarah, played by Rachel Weisz, and Emma Stone as Abigail, who came from a rich family but through circumstances is starting at the bottom, and she gets brought into the palace and works her way up, and Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz vie for being the favourite of the Queen. While this is going on, there's a war with France, and there's political machinations between Nicholas Hoult in the opposition and James Smith as the Prime Minister. Those of you who have seen the show The Thick of It by Armando Iannucci will recognise James Smith. Mark Gatiss from The League of Gentlemen and writing of Doctor Who is also in it. And the acting is absolutely fantastic. Olivia Coleman, as I say, got the Oscar, but for me, Rachel Weisz is absolutely fantastic. Both Coleman and Weisz were both in The Lobster, so they've worked with Lanthimos before, so they know that he's a fairly unique director in the sense he doesn't want them to ask questions about characters' motivations and all of that standard stuff. He just wants them to go places, and he knows what he wants, and that's why he's arguably the best director working at the moment. So without going too much into the plot, obviously the kind of play with history, it's not all fact. Obviously the characters existed in real life and in this time in the 18th century, but obviously some of the events might not necessarily have happened. Historians are split between whether the relationship between Lady Sarah and Queen Anne was actually one of a sexual nature, which is in this film, or whether it was just a very close friendship. Obviously, the people who don't like the film, it's generally because of the sexual nature of it, the strong language. So even though it's a costume drama, and even though Lanthimos didn't write the script, it's a very Lanthimos type script in the sense that there's kind of jarring language. There is obviously black comedy in it, but there's also a vein of tragedy. There's a scene Queen Anne keeps 17 rabbits, and the scene where she explains to Abigail why she keeps those rabbits and why there's 17 of them is actually quite moving. And that's something for me that we haven't kind of seen from Lanthimos. He can do horror and shocking stuff, he can do black comedy, he can do, social satire, but you could argue that kind of human emotion and really quite moving scene, we haven't maybe seen that from him, and that's quite exciting as a fan of his films, that he's kind of adding weapons to his arsenal, as it were. And moving forward, it's going to be really interesting to see what he does next. The look of the film is absolutely beautiful. Two things struck me while I was watching it. One is, why aren't all films this good? And why aren't all filmmakers this good? Which is a question most of us have. But the second thing I was really struck by, it reminded me so much of Barry Lyndon by Kubrick. The look of the film, the scenes at night with candlelight, it's just absolutely gorgeous. They actually used a convex lens because Lanthimos wanted to get it like the old paintings, so where you kind of saw everything in the frame. So they used convex lenses. He used these really interesting shot selection. He used these tracking shots, which obviously Kubrick used famously in The Shining and Paths of Glory and such. But it really reminded me of Barry Lyndon. But for me, granted I've just seen it once, so obviously I would have to watch it a few more times, but for me I would prefer to watch The Favourite to Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon to me is just like going to an art gallery and looking at lots of paintings, but there's maybe a distance between you and the amazing paintings. Whereas The Favourite, yes, it's absolutely beautiful, it's ravishing. I mean, there's a shot at night with people on horseback, they're going out searching for somebody with torches, and it's just absolutely beautiful. But for me it's a lot more engaging, and that might come from the three leads who all kind of take turns in having the power and taking turns in being manipulative and being rather unkind to each other. So it looks fantastic, the acting's fantastic. The story perhaps has been kind of told before as far as political machinations and backstabbing and such to gain power, but it's just done so fantastically. the score is a kind of typical Lanthimos score, in the sense at times it's traditional and then other times it's a little jarring, or the selection of score is a little bit off. But again, that's just, I think, Lanthimos being Lanthimos, because you're not really watching Lanthimos film to have a hugely pleasurable or easy watch. He likes challenging the audience. Again, the ending, if you're familiar with Lanthimos films, the ending is suitably like his other work. So even although this is a costume period piece, it's a Lanthimos film, and if you're familiar with his work, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, highly recommend it. On first viewing, I would say it's maybe not as jaw-droppingly fantastic and just off-kilter as The Lobster was. I think it's more engaging than Killing of a Sacred Deer. But for me, that's 3 great films he's made in a row now. So it will be really interesting to see what he does next. Because obviously now his reputation, I mean, it got so many awards, it won an Oscar for somebody. So obviously actors will now be wanting to work with Lanthimos. So it's going to be really interesting to see which path he goes down. But certainly you can tell with his body of work now of 6 feature films, if I've not miscounted, his body of work is quite fantastic, and hopefully we'll see what he's up to next. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen The Favourite and what you think of it. Am I just Lanthimos biased? So it might not be my favourite Lanthimos film, but it's certainly well worth buying and well worth watching, and I think it will stand up to repeated viewings, because it is excellent. And I haven't even mentioned the duck racing. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Rowan saying have a good evening, and hopefully we'll see you again.